Hello friends, for today's video I wanted to do a DNFs and library saves. So I know most of us know what DNFs are. It stands for did not finish. So when we say it in that way, DNFs, we're talking about books that we didn't complete. So I'm gonna mention a couple of those, and fortunately I only had 2 this first quarter, which is great. There were certainly some books that I didn't love, but I did end up getting to the end of them, so they're not DNFs. I probably should have DNF'd a couple of them. Get to those at the end of the video, and then for the library saves, what I like to do is check out books from my library, as a lot of us do. But not just the physical copies, I also will get the audiobooks from my library. I'm a big fan of immersion reading. For me, it helps with my retention as I'm reading. It helps me just in general stay a little bit more focused as I'm reading. And if you don't know what immersion reading is, it's when you have both the audiobook playing and you're reading at the same time. And with fantasy in particular, I find this exceptionally helpful because there's just so many fantasy names to keep track of. Even with all that said, I still often forget the names of cities or don't remember how to pronounce these made-up names, but still, I love immersion reading. It's been great for me as somebody who, I'm sure a lot of you are like this too. I love to read, but then I start thinking about all the things that I'm like, oh, I need to get around to my laundry, and I haven't watered the plants in a while, and you just start thinking, your brain doesn't feel like it turns off, and so by having both your ears occupied and your eyes, it just makes it that much easier to stay in the stories as you would want to, right? Sorry, my chair's squeaking a lot, if you hear that. It's actually not Luna for once. I feel like usually when there's silly noises, it's my dog around. It's the chair this time. Anywho, so I'm going to go through and mention all of the books that I actually got the audiobooks through the Libby app or through Hoopla. Both of them are apps that are fantastic. The way Hoopla works is you don't have to wait at all. So if they have an audiobook available, you can just check it out. Libby works as if the audiobooks are physical copies, where somebody might have that on hold and you have to wait. Or I should say, it's like they have it checked out, and so you put a hold on it, and then once it's your turn in line, then you can officially borrow the audiobook. So most of them actually came from Libby. Sometimes I got the physical copies too. The reason I'm calling it library saves is because it just really helps me save time and money, not having to look for the books, not having to wait to see if I can find it at the local used bookstores, which I also love checking out. And just in general, I just like hyping up the library because libraries are amazing. Speaking of libraries being amazing, recently one of our local libraries had an event where they partnered with a local organization and charity that has miniature therapy donkeys and miniature therapy horses. And the event was that you could bring your children, or if you yourself were an adult, you could pick out some books and read to these miniature horses or donkeys. And so Sean and I thought long and hard about what books we were going to read to them. Sean picked out The Sun is Late, and so is the Farmer, and I picked out The Old Truck because we were trying to stay on theme. We wanted the donkeys and or the horses, we didn't know which one we were going to get to read to feel very at home with what we were reading to them. So after picking out our books, we finally got to go in. We let all the children go in first, and then we got our chance. And this was the donkey we got to read to. Her name was Josie. She was absolutely adorable, so precious, so sweet, so cute, and it was the best. It was such a fun event. And I highly recommend, if you have a chance to do something like this, to check it out because it was a lot of fun. So big thanks to the library for this opportunity. It was lovely. All that chatter complete and jumping into it. So first up we have Iron Flame. And this one I specifically had the audiobook. And this is one that I'm like, I probably should have DNF'd it. But I really want to give it a shot. And I tried. It just didn't work for me. But regardless, I somehow managed to request the audiobook quick enough that I had access to it. So Iron Flame would be the first one on this list. After that, Cobalt Red. This was a fantastic nonfiction. I talked about it a fair amount at the beginning of this year as I read it right at the end of last year. And then I haven't had a chance to talk about it much since, just because so much of my channel is dedicated to fantasy. But Cobalt Red is fantastic, and it depicts the awful circumstances of people living in the Congo as they are basically forced to try and find the materials that end up being used in our electric cars and in our phones and other sorts of items. And it's a huge issue. I recommend this book to everybody. Switching gears, something not quite so tragic. We have System Collapse. So this was a new Murderbot Diaries entry. And I actually was able to get basically all of the Murderbot Diaries on the Hoopla app, but they don't tend to have newer books on Hoopla. Usually it's better for backlist things. So I was able to get the audiobook from Libby. I just had to wait a little bit, which was fine with me because I had to catch up to this point. System Collapse is the newest one. And I actually got the physical copy as well. So I was able to get both versions from my local library. How to Sell a Haunted House, same as System Collapse. I got the physical and the audiobook through Libby. If you don't know, Libby also has ebook copies often available. I just don't usually like reading digitally. Man, How to Sell a Haunted House was, that was a book, and it was very silly, and I did a very long, in-depth video for it if you're interested in seeing it. I mean, I still don't know how I feel about it, because I'm like, was it ridiculous and bonkers and kind of dumb? Yeah. But was it entertaining also? Yeah. So, and it was intentional. It feels like it was intentional, the stupidity and the bizarre behavior of the characters and just how dumb they are. It feels like it was purposeful because it's kind of like commentary on the horror genre, and it feels like commentary on the stupidity of the characters sometimes that you see in stories. So on one hand, I kind of respect it, but at the other end of the aisle, I'm kind of like, yeah, but they were so dumb. Anyway, this isn't a review for How to Sell a Haunted House. I got both from the library. Cage of Dreams. I was really excited about this one. So I already owned the physical copy because this was a sequel, and I had read the first one and really liked it. The first one is City of Nightmares. I've hyped that one up quite a bit. And Cage of Dreams, lucky for me, a lot of other people are not on the hype train for this duology, so it was pretty quick that I was able to get this one from the library. I'm just going to go through a little bit quicker now for the ones from Libby. So Evershore, which was the novella, one of the novellas that takes place in the Skyward series by Brandon Sanderson, and I wanted to check this out before checking out Defiant, so was able to do that. Tyranny of Faith. I was so happy that I was able to get this one. I had put this one on hold for quite a while ago, and then I finally was able to get around to it. And now I just need to read that third one because at the time I'm filming this, I haven't read the third one yet. But I'm really excited because the third one just recently came out, and I can't wait. I can't wait. And then Dark Star Burning, Ash Falls White. This is another sequel. I did have to wait a little bit for this one because this one has been quite popular. So I, luckily, though, was able to get it. And, oh, man, so many. I feel like this is pretty astounding how many things I'm able to get through the library. And I will say, sometimes when I make TBRs, I actually end up having to redo everything because certain holds will all come in and then other ones don't come in yet, and I'm like, and I have to try to plan around that. So sometimes, like, I'll likely not do a TBR at the end of the quarter just because the next month I'll probably be trying to get around to the things that I meant to get around to, but then maybe other holds had finally come in that I wasn't expecting to have come in. So it can make the reading order kind of chaotic, which isn't great if you're somebody who has to be really regimented, but I'd rather, save the money. Warm Hands of Ghosts. This one was where I actually, if you don't know, you can set it up where if they don't actually have the book yet, but they likely will order a copy, you can make it so that you are notified of when they have the copy available to reserve. And I did that for Warm Hands of Ghosts, and I got the notification and immediately clicked to put it on hold so that when it was actually released, I would be one of the first people in line. So Warm Hands of Ghosts, that's pretty rare that that happens for me because typically by the time I see that it's available, so many other people have gotten ahead of me in line for it. But that one I was able to listen to the audiobook pretty quickly after it came out, which was great. The Girl in the Tower. This is the sequel to Bear and the Nightingale. This one is slightly older, so it was actually not much of a wait, and man, it took me way too long to finally get around to this book, but I'm happy I finally did because I quite enjoyed it, and I can't wait for the third one of that. Bookshops and Bone Dust. I put a hold on this last year. And what's frustrating is you can only have so many holds. You can only have 8 holds. So a little trick, if you don't know, if you can get a digital library card from a different library system in your area, then you can have more holds, which is great. But this one, for the longest time, was just clogging up my hold. I'm like, man, I don't want to lose my spot in line because I'll get it eventually. And if I don't just hold my place in line, then it's going to take forever before I just had to let it. And I finally got around to it, and it was adorable. So, and I especially like the audiobook for this one because it's narrated by the author, which is great. Guns of the Dawn. This is one that I actually put in a request for my library to get the audiobook for. And then I didn't really like the book. And I was like, man. But you know what? At least other people in my area now have access to the audiobook via the library, and hopefully they will enjoy it. And then we have A Fate Inked in Blood. This one has a similar story to Warm Hands of Ghosts, where I put in a hold before it was actually technically available, and so I was one of the first people in line. It's a new release. Really excited that worked out that way. So those are all the ones from Libby. I also was able to get some of them from Hoopla. Like I said, I got all of the Murderbot Diaries except for System Collapse from Hoopla, which was fantastic. And then The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue was on there, which was great. I was worried that this one, even though it's been a few years, that if I were to put a hold on it through Libby, might still take a while. But since it was on Hoopla, there was no need for me to have to wait. So yay for that. I like doing this because I like, one, it feels like, I'm sure a lot of you can relate to the sort of reader problems that come along with your library holds and trying to time things correctly and those sorts of things. But on the other hand, I'm like, is this just so boring? But at the same time, I'm like, but if somebody doesn't use the library very much, it might highlight for them just how helpful libraries can be in getting access, because a lot of people get audiobook subscriptions and they don't have any idea that you can get so many audiobooks through your library. So hopefully for that reason, this is helpful. Now on to DNFs. So there, like I said, are only 2 for this first quarter. One of them was a romance book called The Last Love Note, and that one was pretty much an immediate DNF. I can be kind of picky about the way in which romance stories, contemporary romance stories, that the story is introduced to us or the meet cute happens. And the same goes for romantic comedies. If everything is just like, oh my gosh, shenanigans, and they're like running into each other, or there's just some off the walls kind of goofy way in which everything transpires at the beginning, that rarely works for me. I don't really like, I kind of prefer when it just feels like a normal human interaction, and this one had the most bizarre introduction, and I was like, I don't know. And I just figured it probably wasn't going to be for me, and I fully recognize that I did not get that far into it, but hopefully other people will really like that one. And then this one was really a bummer, but A Tempest of Tea. I was really looking forward to this one. I thought the premise sounded really cool. The cover is gorgeous. The cover designer did an amazing job with this cover, which I know has nothing to do with the book itself. But the idea of it being like Six of Crows, but with vampires and tea, I was like, okay, sign me up. That sounds really cool. And it definitely had elements to it that made that statement fairly accurate, but I didn't feel we got nearly the same amount of character work as we did in Six of Crows. And just in general, when I started it, it immediately felt as though I was already 5 chapters in. It just felt like I missed some pieces. And then once the heist starts happening, which is pretty quickly, my watch is buzzing at me. For what reason, I don't know. I just felt like I had missing pieces, and then once the heist started to happen, I didn't really care that much. I also felt like there were pieces of the world building that seemed cool, but that's the thing, is everything felt like pieces, and I never felt like I had the whole. I didn't feel like I had enough of what I was wanting from the character work, the world building, the investment in the plot, the investment in why it's so important that these characters pull off this heist. I also felt like the elements with the vampires was not what I was expecting. I didn't feel like the vampires felt like that prominent given how much it was presented to us in the marketing. So maybe this was just a marketing fail, that the expectations that were laid out were not what we ended up getting quite, or what I was expecting to get as a result. But I liked the writing style, and I would definitely pick up something else by this author. And I gave this one a decent amount of time, but I just really was like, I don't really care. If I had completed it, it wouldn't have been a 1-star or anything like that. I didn't hate the book. I didn't think it was terrible or anything like that. I just wasn't invested, and I wished I was, but it didn't work out. But anyway, that's it for some DNFs and some library saves. If you have reasons why you love your local library, feel free to hype them up. And if you are somebody who likes to keep track, because often when you check out library books, it'll say like, you saved this much money by checking it out. If you keep track of that and you want to say how much money you've saved by using the library over the course of a year or the last month or anything like that, just to hype up the fact that libraries are awesome, feel free to say whatever you want about why libraries are so great. But anyway, thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you later. Bye.